Chào mừng quý vị đến với chương trình Kiến thức học đường của VNTV. Kính thưa quý vị, trong chương trình hôm nay, xin mời quý vị cùng gặp gỡ anh Việt Mai. Anh Việt Mai là một nhà thơ đã được sinh ra và lớn lên tại Hoa Kỳ. Tuy nhiên, anh là một người rất là muốn tìm về nguồn cội qua những bài thơ mà chính tự tay anh sáng tác. Xin mời quý vị cùng thưởng thức một trong những bài thơ đó sau đây.
My grandma died and I don't know how to cry about it. I was too busy working, too busy playing Halloween, too busy trying to create a future that I forgot about losing my past. My bloodlines feel so thin at times, it's no wonder why I get anemic. My roots are only as deep as San Diego suburbs. I was still a cub when I learned how to separate from the den. I then learned that family was anyone who fed me or let me sleep on their couch. The only thing I knew about my grandmother was that she was a gambler. How bad? I have no idea. What was her hustle? No clue. Apparently Grandma was senile and she had been for a while. How long? I don't know. How old was she? 90 something? How did she? I don't know. Was she nice? Was she funny? Did she tell stories? What kind of stories did she have? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. You know, there should be one of those like mini lessons in social studies class that says something about ethnic ceremonies and customs, how to properly honor our past. And science should teach something about family trees that look more like bushes and fallen leaves that aren't sure which branch they come from. You see, I never enjoyed history because I could never connect to it. I learned more about wars than I did about tradition. I learned that foreign languages are only required to get into universities, 2 years minimum, 4 is a plus. So I pretended to have cooties when partnered up with the new Vietnamese girl that didn't speak any English. I didn't understand why the Vietnamese boy called me a disgrace. Shoot, I was getting straight A's and stars on the green card. So I was taught that I was good at math and science. So I learned that there's a solution to everything, and everything has a formula. So through science, I learned that death is just a part of life because the dead decomposes back into the ecosystem for the living. But I never understood why division was so difficult and why subtraction was so confusing. How can you just take away when I never had enough to begin with? I couldn't just borrow from the neighbor. That was as foreign to me as my knowledge of family history. And I was taught that history wasn't as important, only 2 years required in the A through G. I learned that history is why I have 4 half-brothers. I learned that art was only an elective and I didn't have to express myself if I didn't want to. I could just get the credit. Yeah, just get the credit. Don't waste time with feelings or emotions. They don't put food on the table, a roof over your head, or clothes on your back. I learned that crying was only allowed for injuries, cuts, broken bones, bruises, feather dusters, wooden spoons, slippers flying across the room. I learned about 911, stop, drop, and roll, duck and cover, and wait for the teacher's direction. But there were no drills that taught me how to deal with tragedy. I never learned what to do when mom breaks down. There was no manual for pushing the wrong buttons, no instructions when the remote sense of control was lost. And I never learned what to do about lost. I was just told to find it whenever something was lost, and I'm looking, but I can't find it because I don't even know what it is. So I'm sorry, Grandma. No one taught me how to find it. And whatever it is, I'm afraid it's gone.
Hello, Viet. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It's such an honor to have you here with us. And after listening to your performance, I was like, wow. It took me a moment to really even start saying anything because obviously I'm so amazed at your talent.
I appreciate that. That particular piece was because, well, my grandma did pass away recently in October, and because I had never met her and she was the last grandparent that was alive, I felt a disconnect for myself because I didn't really, growing up in the United States, I didn't have a connection to my Vietnamese heritage. And so I felt the need to somehow figure out how do I honor my grandmother. And the only way I knew how to do that was through spoken word poetry. It was to get my feelings and thoughts out.
So talk about spoken poetry. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure.
The origin of it?
Spoken word is poetry that is performed and delivered on mostly on some kind of a stage setting, but it's performance poetry, so hence the spoken part. And it actually has been around for many years. I mean, when you think about preachers and pastors and elders, even storytelling, dates back to the beginning of time when humans could talk and share stories and gather and spread news. So in that aspect, spoken word has been around since the beginning of time. In the setting, in the time we're in now, spoken word is this new, which is not very new, but it's becoming more and more popular in among the youth and even college students. But a lot of adults are poets too. It dates. You had some of the beat poets. You had Harlem Renaissance poets. And it's taken a transformation. So now there's slam poetry, which is a competition, and basically it's a platform for writers or artists to express whatever is going on. So through the use of metaphors and imagery, we paint these verbal pictures or stories, and we tell these emotions, through emotions, and hopefully to convey some sort of a message at the end, by the end of the poem. But it's a very large community, not just in San Diego, but I want to say worldwide. And so if you look up spoken word on YouTube, you'll find hundreds of thousands of poetry and poets out there. So I started getting into poetry when I was in college. I wasn't raised or taught that I was a creative person. And a lot of my training or the praise that I got was because of the math and sciences. And as an Asian American growing up, that's sort of the stereotype, right? So we kind of naturally fit into to become a doctor, right? Like I'm sure your parents might have told you that at one point.
Unless it's your passion, then.
Well, I loved science.
Yes.
It was something that I enjoyed. I learned about poetry because there were some activists on campus, and there was a poetry group called the Freedom Writers at UCSD, and they just blew my mind away. And I started writing. I was encouraged to continue writing, and I performed at open mics. I was introduced to open mics in downtown San Diego.
You become a poet.
I am a poet.
As well as an educator and a consultant. Wow.
Yeah, the consultant happened 2 years ago. So I am about to enter my third year as a self-employed educational consultant. And what I love about that is it allows me to continue doing the work I was doing in the educational setting as a data analyst. I also get to take the time to work on my art.
Now, I know that you were born and raised in San Diego. So how does it feel like to be, living in the United States, absorbing the multicultural education? How do you reflect back with your roots, and what are some challenges that you encounter while connecting back with your heritage?
That's a very good question. I found it very difficult to connect to my Vietnamese heritage because I am an 80s baby. And during that time, there was not a lot of value on being bilingual. And I would even argue that there's still not a lot of value in being bilingual or multilingual. So my mom raised us on her own. She was a single mom. So I was, it was my brother and I and my mom. And so she worked full time, went to school full time, and we were basically taught to assimilate. And my brother and I talked in English at home, and we obviously talked in English in school. So a lot of my Vietnamese, my Vietnamese was my first language, believe it or not. And now it is not even a working language, you know, that I have. So we lost it. We lost our Vietnamese, and also in turn, you know, my mom did what she could to raise us and to, you know, make a living, right? So she went to school full time. She got her master's, she got her MBA, and she became self-employed. So I kind of saw that was an example for me. And, you know, we were trying to do she was doing the American dream, if you will. And I found it to be difficult to connect to the Vietnamese heritage because it's not in our public education setting. Well, and I don't think that necessary. I don't blame it, but it's just the reality. And so, with my mom being very busy, the most Vietnamese culture that I experienced was food and food. Like there wasn't a whole lot beyond that, you know. You know, we listened to Jammin' Z90 and you know, Channel 933 growing up. So that was culture to me. Right? That was you know, we were influenced by pop culture. So that was the upbringing that I had. And the schools in the neighborhood that I lived in was pretty diverse. So I didn't feel like I was only Vietnamese. In fact, sometimes I forget that I'm Vietnamese because I think that I'm American. And that's how I identify myself. But then there are times when I am reminded very much that I'm Vietnamese and different and not just American, I'm Vietnamese American. Get back to your question about getting back to my roots, it's still difficult. That's why I'm honored to be here, because I think that there are other people like me who are in this, who are being raised in this in the United States and have to juggle the two cultures, and it oftentimes feels like a tug of war. And especially for the young people that are growing up, they may try to fight their traditional culture because they want to blend in with their white American counterparts, right? Or the settings that they're going to school in. I get it, but I wish that there was a way that we can embrace all of it, you know? And through poetry is where I had to find my identity.
And poetry, what are the messages that you want to send to the audience?
I hate with a capital H stereotypes. I feel like even as an Asian American, right? As a Vietnamese American, we're stereotyped into being Asian American, which is a problem in itself. And then, you know, I apply that to the way other people are treated as well, right? And so through my poetry, when obviously I look very young, okay? Don't let the fresh face fool you, but I'm a lot older. So when people first meet me, they think I'm very young. They think I'm a teenager or something. And I could see how it could be a good thing, but when you're interacting with people on an adult level, when you're trying to get serious and talk business, or you want to be respected, right, in a certain light, it becomes very degrading when people make their assumptions. Whether I am a foreigner or you know, the ageism aspect of looking very young, and you know Asian people look so young, and it's a very degrading, a condescending tone or type of interaction. So through my poetry, I get to show people, whether they're students or whether they're adult audiences, that, oh my gosh, everything that I first thought about this person when I first saw him is completely wrong. That's what I'm trying to get across. And I want the young people that I work with to be inspired through my poetry to say, you know what? Here is a person that is showing the world who he is, and basically defying whatever judgments, false judgments are being made. And it's about finding your uniqueness in this world. It's self-expression.
Yes, so through poetry, it allows you to express yourself, express who you are, and kind of embrace, the values of the culture and the heritage.
Right. What I hope to encourage young people to do, all people to do, is to share their own experience. And it's not to say anything is right or wrong or better or worse than another.
Yeah,
it's
art.
to celebrate all of our unique experiences. Young people lose their identity and they don't have a sense of identity. And that's dangerous. That's when you deal with a lot of mental health issues. That's when you deal with a lot of, pressures in society with like bullying and depression and all these really, really difficult, dark subjects, right? That we don't want to talk about. I mean, depression is suicide. Like all those different things are because people are lacking an identity, right? They don't know how to find themselves in this crazy world. So I feel that poetry has been so powerful to me, even after I've gotten to college. Imagine what it can do for young people at the elementary, middle, and high school level.
Poetry is the gateway to finding yourself. And I think it's very important for students to really find themselves.
It feels good, like it's soothing, you know?
You express yourself that way.
Exactly. Yes. And if we can teach kids in schools to embrace this concept of like, wow, art therapy and, using art and creativity to learn. And I feel like hopefully we're trying to get to this place where we're starting to intersect subjects and we can see like, oh my gosh, it's all related. Like math is in music and music and math,
it's all connected.
It's all connected. Science is in art, through colors and light and, wavelengths and all these different things. When you can think about dance as being health and, even biology. Right. All these things are so connected, but we don't teach this way. Everything is one subject and everything is so separate, similar to our society, right? Everything, like people are so separate and segregated. And it's like, how can we really combine
them and
and celebrate them, not just combine them. It's important to have our identities. It's important to have a Black identity, an Asian, a Vietnamese or Asian identity, a Latino identity, a Middle Eastern, whatever the identity is.
We come together to celebrate.
But we come together to celebrate, right?
That's what makes it so beautiful. Yes.
I agree.
Viet, I'm so excited that you find the passion in what you do. And obviously it shows through your poems that you are so very talented in not only expressing yourself, but empowering the youth to really embrace their identity. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
Okay, Viet, so we heard one poem on this show. It makes me want to hear more about, other poems that you have written or performed. So how can we learn more about your work? Can you tell us where?
Yeah, I'm on all social media outlets, right? So I have a website, vietmy.com, and through there, it's kind of in the works, but you can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Hopefully I'll start blogging again and I'll post those, but those are the main ones, and you can just look me up, Vietmy, and add me.
Great.
And we can communicate.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Xin chân thành cảm ơn quý vị đã theo dõi chương trình Kiến thức học đường ngày hôm nay. Kính chúc quý vị một bữa tối an lành và hạnh phúc.